Hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in today to episode 9 we're at now of Accountants Live series, Accountants from the Trenches. So it's where I do a monthly live with other accountants who are doing great things so we can all learn and share what's working, what's not, and help each other to share strategies and ideas to build more successful, profitable, and impactful accounting firms. So if you are watching, just say hello, so I know you're there. If you've got any questions, do put them in the comments, because we are here for the next half hour or so to help. And I am fortunate to have with me today Paul Barnes of MAP. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Nice to have you here. So Paul Barnes is the founder and director of MAP, My Accountancy Place. He also is, I believe, founder of Go Proposal. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. That's right, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so just to kick off, the title of today is How to Systemize Your Firm so it can run almost without you. And Paul has done a great job over the years since he founded his firm of actually building the right systems and the right team to get to where he is today, running a very successful niche accounting firm. And obviously having Go Proposal and being a co-founder of that is evident and testimony to the fact that Paul believes in great systems, because Go Proposal is a great pricing system. So over to you, Paul. Give us just an initial brief background about you, when you started, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, yeah. So back to university, I guess. Graduated in 2008 with first class honours in accounting and finance. It was the height of recession, so nobody wanted me, couldn't get a job anywhere. I wrote speculatively to all the top 100 firms, and I got a response from one, because a lot of the graduate programs were closing. And that was Price Bailey down in the southeast, who were a fantastic top 20 chartered accountancy firm. I only lasted about 6 months. My family and my girlfriend were back up in the northwest, and I said I would give it a go. But you know, every weekend there was a mate's birthday or a family something, and so tried to join the local football team down there and stuff, and it just didn't work. I was just up and down the motorway all the time. So I managed to engineer a move back to Blackpool, which is where I'm from originally. And I worked for a contractor accounting specialist there who have grown rapidly over the last few years, actually. Worked there for about 14 months and thought, I've learned all that I'm going to learn about one-man band limited companies, and I want to work in Manchester. So eventually, a long way back to Manchester where I was at uni, and I've stayed around here ever since. I worked for one of the Tax Assist franchisees, actually, for about 3 or 4 years. Year 2, we won Franchisee of the Year out of the 200. Year 3, we won it again. No one had ever won it twice, and we won it 2 years in a row.
Wow.
And then we decided to defranchise straight away and create our own brand, because we knew that there was so many frailties of our business, and so much we still had to put in place, and so much work we had to do on that business, and yet we were already apparently the best franchisee in the network, which concerned us. So we defranchised, set up our own brand. I did that for a little while, but I think kind of the entrepreneurial bug, if you either got it or you've not, I definitely had it. And then with the rise of Xero in the UK and cloud accounting, I just saw a real opportunity to do something that I thought was better myself. So the day that I was eligible to get my practicing certificate, the application was already in the post and accepted. Handed my notice in to my boss and set up my firm at the age of 27. So that was 7 years ago. Set up MAP. Decided from day one we were going to be all in on Xero, and that we're going to specialise in an industry. Didn't know which one at the time, but it didn't take me long to realise that there was a lot of opportunity working with digital agencies. So for the last 7 years, we've been servicing digital agencies throughout the UK using Xero and its ecosystem as a platform.
Fantastic. What a great story. So just 7 years you've been going. And so just talk about kind of where you are today, and then we'll go back into the nitty gritty of how you got there. So what does your practice look like today?
So where we are today is 21 people plus non-exec. So 21 including me plus non-exec. There's technical staff 16, and then 5 including myself that are in support operational admin roles. We've got about 125 clients, and we provide a full outsourced finance function for digital agencies now. So over time, we've just gone deeper and deeper in terms of what we can do for agencies instead of going wider. We've gone deeper in terms of services that we can provide. Typical minimum fee, about £500 a month. Highest clients paying about £3,500 a month. And they see us as an alternative to building their own in-house finance function. So once you've got to sort of a few £1 million business, you're in a bit of a hole between not quite big enough to justify having an internal finance function, but you've outgrown that arm's length typical accountancy practice, and we fill that void in between to provide an outsourced finance function with industry specialism, technology specialism, with proper segregation of duties. You get an FD, an FC, you get some bookkeepers and credit controllers, all plugged into an agency, depending on what you want. So if you've got people in house that work, then we work around them, and if you need the whole thing, then we'll provide the whole thing.
Fantastic. No, that's definitely a growth area that I talk to a lot of accountants about, is the big opportunity for us now to actually utilize the tools that we have at our disposal, being the cloud technology, to actually add real value to businesses in that sector, which, as you rightly said, you get to a certain point, and business owners get to a certain point where they've grown and they kind of need that financial input at a high level. They need access to an FD, an FC, and a bookkeeper, but they simply can't afford to employ all of these roles. It would cost them, 150, 200 grand, which they can't afford. But firms like us, we can service those much more cost effectively, giving them access to the chunks of each of those roles. Bespokely tailored to their circumstances. So it's definitely a big opportunity, and great to hear that you're making a success of it. So kind of let's circle back then, Paul, to kind of in the early days. When did you first realize, and kind of getting onto the topic, when did you first realize that you needed to systemize your firm so it wasn't kind of reliant on you? When did that kind of penny drop in your head?
I think I'm a bit unusual in many ways, but certainly in this regard, in that it was there from like day zero. I always knew that I wanted to systemize the business, even if I hadn't scaled it. I didn't mean it to get this big at the time. It was going to be me and half a dozen clients, but whether I took on one member of staff or no members of staff probably was my plan at the time. I don't understand why you wouldn't try and make the business as simple and seamless and efficient to run as possible, either because you're going to scale or because you don't want to be wasting your time on constantly reinventing the wheel and doing things from scratch. So if you are going to stay small, then stay small and work 3 days, or do something else on the other days. You don't just want to spend time doing unnecessary admin. And it's also about quality, consistency, and speed for your clients as well. I remember in the very early days, like first engagement letter, I'd have been winging it to a large degree in terms of putting it all together, but I'd only want to wing it once, and I'd want to make sure that I take that extra bit of time so that when it's gone out to this client, the next time it's going to be 10 times easier, and the next time it's ready with very little input. So I wouldn't just make it right for that client. I would say this needs to work for this client, and these are all the different variables that could have happened if it had been another client, so that when we come to the next client, it's far more seamless, and I could pass that task off if I wanted. So I guess quite an impatient attitude, and therefore I never wanted to be doing something more than once or twice. So once I knew how to do it, it was about putting a system in place and then being able to either do it easier the next time or offload it onto other people.
Yeah, fantastic. And so when you first started, when did you first kind of take on how long was it before you took on your first hire?
I took on, the first hire was an outsourced PA. She was part of a company, and she actually works for us full-time permanent on the payroll today, because she went on maternity and her employer only wanted to come back part-time. So as soon as I caught wind of that, I was straight into the nearest Starbucks, having a very fast interview with her and getting into the business, because she was fantastic. Nice. So yeah, it was outsourcing that admin resa really, so that I could focus on growing the business and servicing our clients. So it was always built from support upwards, if you like. So she was my first unofficial hire because she was outsourced, and then my proper first employee was a guy that had worked with me at my previous firm. So he had approached me And I said, well, we're both going to have to speak to your boss before we have this conversation. So we had that respectful conversation with him, and I explained his desire, and then he came over to me from that point. And he was great in the early days at sort of managing all the client relationships that I could focus on running the business. I still think to this day, somehow I've managed to get away with never preparing a set of accounts.
Fantastic.
In 7 years. Managed to hold off long enough before he came in and took that problem off me, and then obviously we built a team to do it now. So
brilliant. And so from an early start then, how did you go about kind of putting those systems in place? So now I'll start to talk about kind of the practicalities. Did you have written documentation that you will write everything down the way you wanted it to be done? Did you use videos? What was the process, the how-to of actually building up those systems for the people that you hired to then?
Definitely videos for everything now. That's the way we do things. We will often write things up as well, but we make very heavy use of videos. Back then I wouldn't have done, but that would be my advice now. And the way that I did it, as I said before, was just on the job really. So when my first engagement letter, or my first management accounts, or my first VAT return, or my first payroll, it would be I was building the system at the same time as delivering that service to the client, so that it was, I remember setting up, like if I sent them the pay slips, I would save that email as a template so that the next one's easy to do. And the process that I went through to everything from logging into the software to running it and all the things that you need to check, I'd just be writing it down as I was going really. So rather than just rush to get things out the door and get caught in that hamster wheel of constantly just churning work out, it was to build a system at the same time as I was delivering the service. But it was mainly written in those days, yeah, but definitely video now.
Fantastic. So, I mean, it's amazing how kind of you said all this came naturally to you, which, most people find quite difficult. And, when they set up their firms, they do everything, and they are the technician because they've set up their firms because they feel they can do something better and have the freedom to do it, but they end up just kind of doing it themselves and not really delegating to others because they feel as if no one can do it as good as they can. So, I mean, I'm intrigued. What kind of, was it any books you read? What inspired you to kind of think in that way? Or is it just you were naturally systematically driven that you knew this was the formula for success for building something that can run without you? So, were there any books that inspired you? Any people that inspired you? What was it?
Yeah, I think most of us are customer service minded. There's not many people who go into business and they don't want to provide an excellent service to the customers, but the way that you do that is different. And for me, rather than having that gratification myself of providing good service, I get far more buzz off my team delivering a good service to clients, and clients saying I'd rather they said what a good job Will or Sam or Sarah have done rather than what a good job you've done, Paul, because I suppose it's an even heightened level of pride that you've been able to develop people that have been able to deliver that service, but it also means that it's scalable and you can do more of it. It's like, that's great if you think I've done a good job, I'm only one person. Whereas if my employees are doing it, now we've got something that we can build. But I read the E-Myth, like many people in business will have done. When I was at my last firm, I went to all the AVN stuff and I was really inspired by that. I think they would have been the main, I don't know. I did read quite a lot of books, but they're the things that kind of stuck in mind as to when I felt really inspired. And between, I guess, that book, the AVN network and the Zero network and Zero software, between those, I just saw a real good opportunity to get very close to a business day by day, minute by minute, and being able to build something that, as I say, for me, it wasn't about scalability, it's about quality and consistency. That may lead to scale, or it may just lead to having a more beautiful business to run, where you've dictated the quality from a very early stage. So I think I was obviously that way minded anyway, so that when I read the books, it was like, this is what I've been missing, and that journey's carried on really. I've many more books that I've read since then, and I'm still very much drawn to the building a systemised business that gets closer and closer to working without you. I've not sussed it yet. I've not completed it, doesn't fully work without me. I'm not sure whether it ever will, especially as such a small business. But that's what you strive for. It's like the thing about perfection, isn't it? You never achieve it, but you always strive for it. And it's the same with building a business that works without you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to look in and help out, and that's fine. But I'm always every day trying to get it that bit more less reliant on me.
Fantastic. And how do you then, to kind of continue that theme of creating systems and developing systems and maintaining systems, how do you inculcate that same passion for systems and the importance and urgency and need for having systems within your team? What kind of tips or processes or training do you give them to ensure that these systems continue even without you having to create them in the background?
Yeah, good question. I think you need people that are sort of that way minded anyway, and it just tends to be, organized people, whether they've been used to building and executing systems in the past or not. But people are just well organized and not just, rushing from one thing to the next. So having the people that have got the right mindset. I would never review a piece of work until I knew what process it followed. So if someone's taking you through these management accounts, these year-end accounts, I'd say, okay, show me the process that you followed to produce these, because I don't trust in myself almost to review it and spot everything that could, because I might miss something. So just show me that you followed a process first to give us both reassurance that there's logic to what you followed. And if there isn't a process, then go back and write the process that reflects the work that you've done. So everything had to follow a structure and a process, and that can be evolved and improved over time. Just version 1 initially, and you can build on it and flesh it out afterwards. But if all we're doing is just throwing work out there, and every time we're reinventing the wheel, then we're not really building a business. We're just a bunch of freelancers that work together. So the right mindset. Pushing back and make sure people are using system process, congratulating and thanking people, and making noise about people that have built a good process or developed something, and making sure that you've got a culture of doing that. Pointing out when not having a system or process has resulted in a problem or a challenge, either for us or our clients. So I guess, the culture of it. And then we've done like book clubs in the past. So like we'll go through a book together. So we might say, right, for the next 2 months, we're going to read 2 chapters a week of the E-Myth. And then we're going to get together and say, what did we highlight in our book? What did we learn? How could we implement that into MAP? How could we use that for our clients? So right people, kind of right appreciation of people that are fitting within our core values and systemizing, and just enforcing it at every opportunity, I think. And you've got to lead by example. Most of the systems and processes that people came into were built by me, so I wasn't asking them to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself.
And what about the role of checklist? Do you use checklists in line with your processes? So the process is kind of the how-to, so you do management accounts, and then a checklist is to ensure that things have been followed and don't fall through the cracks. Do you have a lot of checklists in place for things like that?
Yeah, we do. I think so we have playbooks, which is like the detail, if you like, of everything you've got to do. So you've got to log in here, you've got to create this work paper pack, you've got to set up these tabs, you've got to rename this. That should never be a checklist for me. That's too patronizing, because if you've got people that have been working with you for 5 years and they've been doing that every week for 5 years, they shouldn't need to tick the fact that they've logged into a website. That should be like a guide for the people that are new. That should be like their training material to come and look at. And we always encourage new people to stress test the training material as well. So if you think you can't choose to not follow the system, you have to follow the system. But what you can choose is to improve the system. So if there's a problem with the process and you think there's a step missing or it should be different, tell us and we'll develop it and improve it. But don't just choose not to follow the process. And so yeah, the playbooks dictate the whole picture, if you like, everything that somebody who's just dropped out of space needs to be able to follow to do the job. But then the checklists are like the fundamental things that we can't send something out the door unless we've checked certain things on a tax return, year-end accounts. And most of those, to be honest, I've never been a really big fan of like swipe files, like just copying and pasting somebody else's system and process, because I feel that it gets better momentum and better engagement when you've built it organically yourself. So unfortunately, a lot of our processes, a lot of our checklists have been built from like pain and mistakes in the past. And then it's like, we need to stop that from happening again. So let's put a check in. But then when you do that, you'll think of other things that could have gone wrong and other risks. So yeah, playbooks for the start to finish, but then checklists for the fundamental things that have to be checked every single time.
Fantastic. And what systems do you use for that? So is it, a playbook, is that just a PDF document of everything you need to do? And a checklist, is that an Excel spreadsheet that someone would print off, or is it a Google form? How does that look in kind of reality?
Yeah, the playbook is a Google Doc, so that it's live and everyone can obviously collaborate and work on that together. So that's where I do all the detail of the playbook, and we'll always start with like a why. Like why does this playbook exist? What's the purpose of it? What's the point of it? Why is it important to use right? And then we use Asana for the checklists. Okay. So the actual ticking through to make sure that the tasks have been done, we use Asana. Yeah.
And so in terms of the checklist, does that need to be gone through for every compliance thing? So every tax return and accounts, the Asana checklist has to be completed.
That's right. Yeah. So over time, we're always looking for feedback from the team. As I say, it's okay to challenge the process. Don't just ignore it. So the team say, look, we think this step is unnecessary, or it could be merged into step 2 so that there's less steps or whatever, then we'll listen to that. But we just have a defined list and try and simplify it over time just to be the essential things that need to happen.
Fantastic. And what kind of objections do you get perhaps from the team when you're constantly hammering on about systems and checklists? Do you get many objections, and how do you handle them?
Yeah, I'll always welcome them, as I keep saying, really. The moment where everyone just agrees and nods their head is when you've not got a good healthy culture. Like a good healthy culture should have an amount of conflict, a healthy amount of conflict, challenge, people pushing one another, questioning how things are done. That's a really good place to be in. We had somebody who joined us recently. She was exactly like that. She actually run her own accounting firm. She kept coming up with ideas, and then another member of staff was thinking, I could hear some of the terminology, like some of the phrases, and said, no, we do it this way, we do it this way. So, well, just listen, because we might not have it right. So try and take some of that feedback. And yeah, some people come in and they might think that that we're holding them back, restricting them, like if they already know what they're doing. But we also help them to realise that there might be something right in what they're saying. Like we might have made it more strict, and part of you coming in is we want you to challenge the way that we've done things, but we do need to have our own DNA and our own way of doing things, so that we're not just relying on the people that are here. We're an organisation, people can come and go, but we have a way of doing things so that there's as least friction as possible of somebody leaving and someone else taking over the work. So yeah, we get challenged, and I think some people maybe do think it's overkill initially, but we just work together to try and find that right balance and have that mutual respect.
Fantastic. And what would you say has been the big benefit of insisting upon having the right systems in place, that foundation that you've built your practice upon, in getting those systems right in the first place, and placing such big importance on updating the systems and housing the system somewhere and actually using the systems? What impact and has that had on you kind of personally to where you are today?
Consistency, quality and speed, I'd say. Consistency, obviously, as you said before, we built Go Proposal out of the fact that many accountancy firms would have horrendous scope creep problems. So if they didn't have a process to make sure that this client that we 9 months ago said we'll do the bookkeeping for £200 has now gone from 200 transactions a month to 700 transactions a month and we're still charging them the same fee, you need a process in place to make sure that you have that consistency. So if client A has got the same number of transactions as client B, they both pay the same price. They don't pay more because they don't pay less because they joined us longer ago, or because we like them, or because we're scared of the client. They both pay the same fee because they both got the same number of transactions. So you have to have a process in place to make sure that you have that consistency across the business. Otherwise, you'll just have leakages everywhere in that place. And in that example, that's from like a pricing and a scoping perspective, but also reputation perspective. Because what happens if client A meets client B and says, "What? You're only paying £200 a month, and I'm paying £700 a month, and we've got the same." So you need systems and processes to allow for consistency, so that it's you at your best replicated over and over and over again. When you're operating at your best, your absolute best, what does that look like, and how do we make sure that we always stick to that level and things don't fall through the cracks? And then, as I say, a quality measure as well. So same sort of thing, want quality, consistency, similar sort of thing, but how is the actual work that we've produced to the highest standard that we can produce over and over again, and it's not reliant on Steve did the job rather than Steph. It's we all follow a process that, and I see a process or system as the combination of all the brains in MAP. So it's the very best of everyone put together in a process. If we had everyone working on this job, with all the best of their abilities put into it, what would best look like? And then speed, so that you're not having to think, how do I do a bookkeeping job again? This client's job's come in and it's 500 transactions to reconcile. It's like, no, we've got a system and process that we follow that makes this job as quick as possible. And yeah, as you say, that's enabled the business to work the majority of the time without me. And it's only the really not creative stuff, but the things that require you to think maybe beyond your existing knowledge level, I think is what business owners are good at. So you might have a situation with a client where like a client going through an MBO at the moment, and I've got loads of experience in that, and neither have I, but I'll figure it out with them. Some people might feel quite uncomfortable in that situation because you've not got the technical knowledge, but that's kind of where I expect to be brought in, and that's fine. But even that, over time, I'm looking to hire more and more people that are better than me at doing that sort of thing, so that I can get as close to just focusing on the business as possible.
Fantastic. So you mentioned the pricing system, obviously, as one key system in the practice to ensure, that addresses the problem of scope creep and consistency in pricing, which is, one of the key pain points for many accountants. What would you say are your other kind of top 3 systems that kind of hold the fort together?
Your finance system. So Xero is our finance system, and we've made sure, and much of the innovation in Go Proposal is to help us with our needs as a finance system. So the fact that it automatically triggers repeated invoices and lists out the exact services that you're delivering on the invoice and repeats them within Xero means that today I could run a report for our business that says exactly what services we've sold this month, how many units of them, what price we've sold, and therefore total fees per service, per pod, as we call it, etc. So we can do some real rich reporting around our own internal financials, and we've automated a lot of that. So we only set off a repeat invoice once, and then it runs forever. All that kind of stuff. Automatically collect the money via Go Cardless, so and automatically catch all of our receipts through Receipt Bank. So if I stretch your question a little bit, I guess, and you can let me have them 3 as the finance system, then Xero, Receipt Bank, and Go Cardless would be one system. For finances. Go Proposal from as a sales system. Workflow would be Asana for your checklists, and then Google Docs for your playbooks. And then we're using Fusionsoft as a CRM, so that does all of our marketing campaigns. So email sequences, forms, all that kind of stuff. But we actually use Infusionsoft to chase clients for information as well. So that'll say, if we start working together today and we're going to do your September management accounts, and then monthly on the 1st of October, you'll get an email to say, it's time to start your management accounts. Here's what we need. Click this button when you're ready, and then we'll get on with our job. And then it drops onto the right person's dashboard, and then they jump into Asana and do it from there. So we've coordinated the CRM with marketing and with delivery as well.
Fantastic. And what about onboarding system? What do you use for that?
So we used Go Proposal, obviously, in terms of working out the right services and getting the engagement letter right. We do our AML checks currently through Credit Safe. We're about to move to Tax Calc for doing AML checks. Go cardless, obviously, to get the direct debit set up. We have a list of tasks to follow in Asana, so a template list of all the things that have to happen with onboarding. Does that answer your question when you say onboarding?
Yeah, I guess what happens after the proposal is signed, so that all comes through, that links into the finance system, and then how does the client get kind of onboarded in terms of passed to an account manager, or their, all the various tasks that need to be done? I think you mentioned the AML, but is there, I guess is there kind of a mix, a mix between the personal input of a person actually getting in touch with a client and having that personal touch together with the automation that goes on in the background?
Yes, there's a bit of automation in terms of like, here's an example email to send to your last accountant to help us with professional clearance and give us permission. Here's the letter that's about to arrive in the post from HMRC with your authorization code to authorize us as your agent. Here's a link to book your onboarding meeting with us. So then they book the onboarding meeting and they have that with the team. Money laundering, everything's going on, professional clearance is going on, tax authorizations are going on. And then of course you need to configure an onboarding process that's fit for the client. So do we need to set up Xero, migrate Xero, set up Receipt Bank, set up Go Cardless, and then our client coordinator will make sure that they're properly set up in our workflow systems, so Infusionsoft and Asana. So there's a bit of definitely the onboarding is there's a bit of quite a bit of manual intervention at that point, but I'm sure we can do more, but I think a lot of it is necessary as well to make sure that the client's treated as an individual, and that we tailor the onboarding to what they need.
Fantastic. So just final couple of questions. Software is always a big one. What would you say are the best bits of software that you use in your practice? Obviously, you've got Go Proposal. You've mentioned Asana already. You've got Xero and Receipt Bank for your finance function. Any other kind of key bits of software that you are using in your practice? I
had a lot of value out of LinkedIn Talent Solutions when we've been recruiting. Okay. So we use that for advertising to get inbound applicants, but it also provides you with recommended matches at the same time. So based on the criteria that you put in the job description, it'll say, here's some recommended matches in your area that you might be interested in, and we've saved a fortune by doing that. The ads are really cheap, and if you've got the time to scroll through and reject or send email to the right candidates, that's worth its weight in gold. We also use Recruity for recruitment, which manages our pipeline. So if an applicant comes through LinkedIn Talent Solutions or the free job boards on Indeed and things like that, or through our website, social media activity, they all drop into Recruity. And then we move them along on Kanban style from, interested to video introduction, first stage, second stage. You have the pipeline and track the history of that candidate. I'm just looking at my bookmarks now on Google Chrome. So Asana I've mentioned, Infusionsoft I've mentioned for CRM, Receipt Bank, Fathom for management reporting. Okay. So we use that for all of our management accounts, and we hardly have to touch it now. So we built our management accounts template within Fathom. And if we get the data right in Xero, it automatically pushes to Fathom. Okay. So then we can just put a bit of narrative on it, add a few custom KPIs, graphs and charts if we want to, but the base set of management accounts is there ready for us in Fathom. We use Float for cash flow forecasting. Go Proposal, obviously, Xavier. So we use Xavier for data quality and analytics of the data that's inside Go Proposal, which has been absolutely amazing product. We use Capitalize for funding applications. There's a lot in there. Tax Calc for stat accounts and personal tax.
Cool.
Yeah, that's some of them.
Fantastic. Excellent. That's been great, Paul. Lots of great nuggets there, I'm sure, for many accountants to take away. about, you know, the need and the benefits of having the right systems in your practice. And as you can see from what Paul said, he started with systems very early on, and that's held him in good stead to kind of have the right foundations to then springboard and grow a practice, a scalable practice that can run without him, where he's not required to be in the business all the time for it to run and function. So just lastly, Paul, what's next for Paul Barnes and for MAP? What does the future hold for you guys in the next 5 years?
I've always said that I don't see any reason for us to move outside of digital agencies, because at the end of the day, we've got 125 of them. It's a drop in the ocean. There's so many of them for us to go at. But when you think of how hard it is to prize a business away from their current accountant, and we've obviously got competitors in this space as well. I have gradually started, and I guess COVID has influenced it a little bit in terms of the risk of being very, very much focused on one sector. I have started to soften a little bit at the thought of working in other industries, because we turn leads away all the time at good businesses that are not agencies. So we are starting to think that now we've got to a certain level, we've got a way of doing things, could we drop that into other industries? So that's something that we're still focusing on at the moment. But otherwise, it's the big A word, if you like, the advisory word, value add, whatever you want to call it. We've gotten good now at getting clients' data right and getting it right quickly. And now it's what else can we do? How else can we provide value to the clients to really get under the bonnet of the numbers and go beyond finances? And that's something that we're looking to do more and more every single week. Fantastic.
Paul, it's been a great pleasure to have you on here today. If people want to get hold of you, where's the best place for them to go?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's linkedin.com/ Paul Barnes ACCA, I think. But if you look up Paul Barnes MAP, you'll find me there anyway. Or on Twitter at Paul_Barnes ACCA.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Paul, it's been a pleasure. I hope everyone who's watched this, or if you're watching on the replay, that you've got a lot of value from it. Paul has shared his words of wisdoms of growing his practice from just 7 years ago, starting off on his own, to a team of 21 and close to world domination in digital marketing agencies, soon to break into other industries. So thank you everyone for watching. The next episode is with the lovely Laura Taylor, and that is next month. So keep a lookout for that one. It's going to be a good one of how Laura has grown her practice and used social media to do so. So if you've got any other questions, I'm sure Paul will be on hand. Just put them in the comments below, either on Facebook or LinkedIn, and I'm sure Paul will be more than willing to answer. So thanks again, everyone, for watching. Thank you again, Paul, for being here today, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Reza. Cheers.